I heard him say he'd already done it, calm like he was talking about the weather. Not a funeral. I waited for someone to stop him. Someone to say my name. No one did. So I left the house quietly and made sure the car never moved. I was still holding the warm bag of fried chicken when I heard my stepson in the dark garage say, "Yeah, I already cut the brake line. See you at his funeral tomorrow." My body locked up right there. Breath stalled in my chest. The garage smelled like cold concrete and motor oil. That sour bite that never leaves, no matter how much you clean. The overhead light was off. Only the small window glow and the blue shine from his phone. His silhouette stood broad and relaxed, like he was listening to sports scores. My fingers tightened on the bag, grease soaking warm into my palm. I had bought it thinking maybe we could have one normal night. A stupid peace offering. His voice stayed calm to calm. He said it's done. He won't make it to Monday. And he laughed. Not loud. Just enough. Like someone sharing a private joke. Then I heard my wife's voice through the phone. Soft and careful. Not shocked. Not angry. She didn't say stop. She didn't say my name. She asked, "Are you sure?" That question hit harder than the threat. Not "don't do it." Not "what's wrong with you." Just making sure the plan was solid. I felt my vision narrow, my ears ring. He shifted and metal clinked on the workbench. Maybe a tool spinning between his fingers. He said, "I'm sure you said you wanted it over." There was a pause. I waited for her to say anything that sounded like a conscience. She exhaled instead, relief in it. "Tomorrow," she said. "Just be careful." My stomach dropped like I missed a step on the stairs. I backed up slow. My boots scuffed concrete. His head turned a fraction. I froze, held my breath until my chest burned. He didn't look for me. He went back to the call. Lowering his voice again, I slid out of the garage like a ghost. Didn't slam the door. Didn't let it click. Cold night air cut my face. The street looked normal, porch lights on. A dog barking once, then quiet. My hands shook so bad I nearly dropped my keys. I walked like I was just stretching my legs, not like a man who'd just heard his own funeral planned. Patience is my tool. The words came to me the way old habits do. I'd said them for years on job sites. Slow down. Use it first. I sat in my old sedan with the engine off. Breath fogging the glass, my phone heavy in my hand. Call the police felt right then wrong. No proof, no recording, just my word against theirs. In a small town that turns you into the problem fast, so I did the next thing that kept me alive. I opened the roadside app, ordered a tow, and stared at my house like it belonged to someone else, while the chicken went cold beside me. The dispatcher sounded half asleep when she answered, asked for the pickup location. I stared at my own driveway like it wasn't mine anymore. "Front driveway," I said. "Silver truck. Need it towed tonight." My voice surprised me by staying steady. She asked if it was drivable. I said no, safety issue. The lie sat heavy but necessary. She asked how soon. I said as soon as possible. Then I added please. After I hung up, I sat there listening to my engine tick as it cooled. My hands shaking, but my mind already moving ahead. Dates, times, what mattered, what kept me breathing. Inside the house, the lights stayed warm and calm, like nothing was wrong. Like nobody had just agreed I shouldn't see another week. The tow truck headlights came down the street slow, sweeping across the houses. The driver stepped out, thick jacket beanie pulled low. Looked at the truck, then at me. "You called it in," he asked. "Yes," I said. He asked what was wrong with it. "Brakes," I said. My throat tightened, but I didn't let it show. "Taking it to a friend?" He squinted like he wanted more. Then shrugged. I've seen stranger. Metal cable rattled as he hooked it up. That sound crawled under my skin. Chains always do. I watched my truck roll onto the flatbed. That truck had carried years of work. Storms, long drives home. Now it looked like evidence. Red tow lights blinked against the houses. Nobody came outside. Nobody asked questions. The driver handed me paperwork. I signed with a shaking hand. He asked if I was all right. I said I was just tired, which was true and not true at the same time. As the tow truck pulled away, I felt something tear loose in my chest. Not anger, not relief, something closer to grief. My phone buzzed, then buzzed again. My wife asking where I was. My stepson asking why his truck was moving. I didn't answer. Not yet. I sat there watching the red lights disappear like a fuse burning down. Patience is my tool, I reminded myself. I didn't pull out right away. I waited, hands on the wheel, breathing slow. Then I drove off easy, like I was heading for coffee, winter air sharp through the cracks. Roads slick in places. I pointed the car toward Dayton. Toward the one man who knew engines and knew his son. Because if I was going to survive this, I needed truth that didn't depend on my voice alone. I drove with the radio low, not for music. Just for another human voice in the car, my knuckles stayed tight on the wheel. Every red light felt longer than it should. Every passing headlight made my shoulders tense. The road toward Dayton shimmered where the cold had started to bite, and I kept seeing his silhouette in the garage, calm, casual. Like death was an errand he'd already checked off. The heater blew air that smelled like old dust, and my thoughts kept circling one name. Ray Mercer, his biological father, not my friend, not my ally. But the one man Evan had always treated carefully. The way you treat someone who knows exactly how you work. Ray had been a mechanic his whole life. Grease ground into his hands. Facts over feelings. If anyone could look at a brake line and tell the truth without softening it, it was him. Needmore Road looked the same as always. Tired storefronts, low houses, the kind of place where people mind their business. Ray's place sat back from the street. One-story brick, old Buick under the carport. A flag stiff in the cold. I sat in the sedan for a second before getting out. My mouth dry, heart steady now in a way that scared me. Like something colder had taken over. I knocked. The door opened quick. Ray stood there in sweatpants and flannel. Eyes sharp, even half asleep. "Frank," he said. Like my name didn't belong here. "What the hell are you doing here?" I told him I needed to talk. His eyes flicked to the driveway. "Where's the truck?" he asked. On the way I said, "Towed." That woke him up. His eyebrows jumped. "Towed why?" "Because I don't trust it," I said. "Can I come in?" He hesitated, then stepped aside. "You better start making sense." Inside smelled like coffee and old leather. The living room small and worn, photos of Evan as a kid on the wall, the good years frozen in frames. Ray motioned to the kitchen table. I sat, pulled the tow receipt from my jacket, slid it across. He read it slow. "You had it brought here," he said. "Why? Because you know cars?" I said. "And because I need someone to look at it before anyone else touches it." Ray leaned back, crossed his arms. "Frank," he said. "What's going on?" I took a breath, felt the weight of saying it out loud. "I overheard Evan tonight," I said. Ray's eyes narrowed. "Overheard him say what?" I chose my words careful. "I have reason to believe someone messed with my brakes." On purpose, Ray stared at me, then stood and walked to the counter. Flipped open a small notepad. "If you're accusing my son," he said. "You better be sure." I met his eyes. "I'm not asking you to believe me." I said, "I'm asking you to look." He studied me a long second, then nodded once. "All right, I'll look. But if it's dangerous, it's not moving an inch." Relief hit me hard. "That's exactly what I want," I said, and when headlights swept across the window, I knew the truth was finally about to speak without me having to raise my voice. The tow truck rolled up just after midnight, chains clanking loud in the quiet neighborhood. Ray stood with his arms crossed, watching every inch, like the truck already belonged to him. The driver backed the flatbed down slow, metal whining. Ray told him, "Set it right in front of the garage." "Don't drive it." The truck settled with a heavy thud. And for the first time all night, my chest loosened a fraction. Ray wasted no time, popped the hood, grabbed a flashlight, slid a creeper out like muscle memory was doing the thinking. I stayed back near the door, my phone buzzing again in my pocket. Evan asking where his truck was, Carol saying this was getting out of hand. I shut the phone off, shoved it away, watched Ray's boots disappear under the chassis. A minute passed, then another. Ray muttered to himself under their half-words, sharp breaths. The sound a man makes when something doesn't sit right, then he sucked in air hard. "Frank," he said, voice tight, "come look at this." My legs felt heavy as I crouched. The flashlight cut across metal lines. I'm not a mechanic, but I know clean from worn. The brake line wasn't rusted, wasn't frayed. It was sliced straight through, neat, careful, like someone took their time. My vision blurred that not I started. Ray finished it, not an accident. He rolled out and sat up, ran a hand over his face. When did you drive it last? Yesterday afternoon, I said. It felt fine. He nodded. Then it was done after that. Tonight, the word hung between us like smoke. Ray stood and paced once, then pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police, he said. My pulse jumped. Wait, I said. Let me make one call first. He hesitated, then nodded. One, I turned my phone back on. Ignored the flood of messages, called my attorney. Kept my voice steady while she told me what mattered. Don't embellish. Document everything. Call them now. When I hung up, Ray was already dialing. Sirens came later. Red and blue washing the garage walls. Officers photographed the cut, asked questions, wrote notes. The truth turning official, inch by inch. When they left, the garage went quiet again. Ray leaned against the workbench. My own kid, he said. I sat down hard. Shaking worse now, not from fear, but from knowing I'd been right. And knowing that didn't make it hurt any less. By morning, the story had already been told without me. I woke on Ray's couch with my coat still on, neck stiff. The smell of coffee drifting in from the kitchen. For a second, I didn't know where I was. Then I remembered the clean-cut line, and my stomach turned. Ray sat at the table, scrolling his phone. Jaw tight? You're all over Facebook, he said, and turned the screen. Carol's post filled it. Long and careful, asking for prayers, saying I left in a rage, saying her son was being falsely accused, talking about lies destroying families. There was a picture of them smiling from last Christmas, our living room glowing behind them. The comments were already stacking up, sympathy, anger on her behalf. People choosing sides without asking a single question. I drove back toward Riverside to grab clothes, keeping my head down. Neighbors I'd waved to for years suddenly found reasons to look away. One woman stared at me like I'd tracked mud into her church. Squad cars sat near my house. An officer stepped up when he saw me. Asked a few more questions. Inside the house felt hollow. Carol sat on the couch, eyes red, hands folded. Evan stood near the hall, arms crossed, calm, bored. She said I'd scared them. Evan said I'd been acting weird lately, like he was setting the stage. I answered the officer the same way I had before, slow, factual, no emotion to grab onto. When they left, Carol told me I shouldn't be there. I said you planned my funeral. Her face went white. She called me sick. I walked out before my mouth ruined what patience was still protecting. That afternoon, Ray called. Police had talked to neighbors. One saw Evan in the garage late. Another heard tools. My phone buzzed with a voicemail from Evan. Smooth and annoyed, saying I messed up, saying we could have talked. I sent it to my attorney without replying. That night, I sat alone in a cheap motel watching headlights slide across the parking lot. The radio murmuring like background noise to keep my thoughts from getting loud. The town had already decided who I was. Angry husband, unstable stepfather, and I understood then how easy it is to bury the truth when it's inconvenient, and how important it is to stay quiet long enough to let it dig its own way out. The next morning, the truth started picking up weight. Not loud, not fast, just heavy enough to matter. Buddy from the shop called me early, voice low like he didn't want the walls listening. Said he'd heard what was going on and had a hunch. He'd stopped by the auto parts store Evan liked. Asked polite questions. Said he was helping with an investigation. They showed him camera footage off the record. My stomach tightened as he talked. Evan on screen 2 days earlier buying a tubing cutter. Calm, unhurried. 10 minutes later, Carol at a different register. Paying cash, buddy. Said it wasn't official yet. But it was real, and it lined up to clean to ignore. By noon, my attorney called back, sharper this time, more confident. She said the police had requested the footage formally, that receipts were being pulled, that timelines were tightening. The word tightening stuck with me. Like a net drawing closed, the radio confirmed it later. A short local update about a brake tampering investigation in Riverside. No names yet, just enough for the rumor mill to shift direction. My phone stayed quiet after that. No messages from Carol, no smooth talk from Evan. Silence can be loud when it's new. That evening, I sat on the edge of the motel bed staring at my hands, the shaking finally easing, not because I was safe yet, but because I wasn't alone in the truth anymore. Evidence doesn't argue, it just sits there waiting. I thought about how close I'd come, how a clean cut and a short drive could have ended everything, and how patience had bought me time I didn't even know I needed. People like Evan rush because they think speed is power. They don't see the trap building when someone else slows down. I didn't feel relieved, I felt steady. And in a situation like mine, steady was everything. The courthouse smelled like old paper and floor polish, the kind of place that makes you lower your voice without being told. I walked in beside my attorney, shoulders tight, heart steady, and saw them before I sat down, Carol in a dark coat with her cross necklace out front like armor. Eyes red but focused, Evan beside her clean shirt, calm face. Like he was waiting for a dentist appointment, not a hearing. When he saw me, his mouth twitched, just a little. Like he still thought this would bend his way. I sat, hands between my knees. Patience is my tool, I told myself again. When my name was called, my legs felt heavier than they should. I raised my hand, swore to tell the truth, and sat. The microphone too close, making my breathing sound loud in my own ears. My attorney asked me to explain what happened. Not with drama, not with guesses, just facts. I talked about the garage, the dark, the phone glow, the words I heard. Yeah, I already cut the brake line. See you at his funeral tomorrow. I said it slow, letting it sit. I said my wife asked if he was sure. I said she didn't stop him. A murmur moved through the room. Evan stared straight ahead, jaw tight now. Carol's face drained of color. When his lawyer stood to cross-examine me, tried to paint me as angry, resentful, unstable, I didn't rise to it. I answered the same way every time. Calm, consistent, no extra words to twist. Then the evidence spoke without emotion. The mechanics report, the photographs, the store footage, the voicemail Evan left me, smooth and annoyed, not surprised. The judge leaned forward, listening, tapping his pen once against the desk. When Evan's lawyer tried to call it coincidence, the judge shut that down with a look that said he'd heard enough excuses in one lifetime. Probable cause, he said, no contact order. Evan shifted for the first time. Anger flashing through the calm, deputies moved closer. Carol let out a small broken sound. Not for me, not even for Evan, but for the story she could no longer control. And as I walked out into the cold daylight, I didn't feel like I'd won. I felt like I'd finally been heard, and that was heavier and quieter than I expected. After the hearing, people filed out slow, whispering like they'd just left a funeral. I stayed seated a moment longer, letting the room empty around me. My legs felt weak now that I didn't have to hold myself tight. Ray stood a few rows back, hands in his pockets, eyes on the floor. My attorney leaned in and told me not to speak to anyone. Not reporters, not neighbors, not Carol. Silence is protection, she said. And for once, silence felt like strength. Outside the courthouse, the winter light hit my face sharp and pale. I breathed it in like proof I was still here. Evan was led past me in cuffs. Not dramatic, not resisting. Just tight jaw and burning eyes. He didn't look sorry. He looked cheated. Like something he believed he deserved had been taken away. Carol followed behind him, crying now. For real. Shoulders shaking, mascara streaked. She didn't look at me until the last second. And when she did, her face twisted with anger, not guilt. Like I'd ruined her life, instead of saving my own. Ray shifted closer to me without saying a word, a quiet wall. And I realized then this wasn't about revenge. This was about consequence finally catching up. That night I didn't sleep, not because I was afraid, but because my body didn't know how to stand down yet. Every sound outside the motel made me listen. Every shadow made my pulse jump. But underneath it all was something new. A hard truth settling in. I hadn't beaten anyone. I hadn't exposed some grand evil. I just refused to play along. Refused to stay quiet until it killed me. Justice didn't feel like triumph. It felt like gravity, slow and unavoidable. And for the first time since the garage, I believed it was going to do the rest of the work without me having to push it anymore. I went back to the house a week later with a deputy standing by. Not for drama, just for distance. The place looked the same and felt wrong. Like a set after the actors leave, Carol wasn't there. That was arranged. But she was everywhere anyway, her candle smell in the air, a dish towel folded just right, a note on the counter about calling the plumber. My boots sounded too loud on the floor. I moved room to room filling boxes. Careful, slow. Like rushing might wake something ugly. In the basement, I found my father's old toolbox. Heavier than I remembered. The weight of it made my throat tighten. He'd taught me to fix what you can and walk away from what you can't. I finally understood that lesson. In the bedroom closet, I saw the fried chicken bag from that night, crumpled in the trash. Grease stains dried dark, the smell long gone. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at it like it was proof of how close I came to believing things could still be normal. I tied the bag shut and dropped it back in, not as evidence, just as a reminder of what almost got me killed. The deputy shifted his weight, bored, patient. Like this was just another Tuesday. For me, it was the end of a life I'd been trying to hold together with quiet and compromise. I signed the divorce papers the next month. No shouting, no courtroom speeches, just signatures and silence. Carol tried to leave a note about talking later. My attorney crossed it out without hesitation. Ray transferred the truck back to me once evidence was finished. But I didn't want it anymore. I sold it cheap and let it go. Some things carry too much memory to keep. I moved into a small place near the river. Second floor, quiet, no garage. The first morning there, I sat outside with coffee and watched the water move. I didn't feel happy. I felt empty and tired. But underneath that was something steady, something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt safe enough to breathe without checking over my shoulder, and that was more than I'd had before. The first week in the new place passed slow, mornings quiet, nights quieter. I slept with the window cracked just to hear the river move, proof the world kept going. I donated some of the truck money to a local program that helps people leave dangerous homes. I didn't tell anyone about it. I didn't need credit. I just needed the weight of it to land somewhere useful. One evening, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. You ruined everything, no name, no threat, just blame. I deleted it without replying. That was the last move I made in that game. I thought I'd feel triumphant when it was over. When the court dates passed, when the house was behind me, I didn't. I felt older, quieter, more careful, but I also felt clear, like fog had finally burned off. I kept thinking back to that moment in the garage. The glow of his phone, the calm way he said funeral, the silence that followed from the person who was supposed to protect me. If I'd yelled, if I'd rushed, if I'd tried to confront them, I wouldn't be sitting here now. Patience didn't make me brave, it made me alive. So if this story stays with you, if it hits somewhere close to home, hear this part clearly. Trust the cold feeling in your gut when something is wrong. Not your pride, not your hope, not the version of people you want to believe in. Move smart, document. Tell someone who will listen. And give the truth time to stand up on its own. I didn't win by hurting anyone. I won by stepping aside and letting consequences arrive on their own schedule. Silence kept me breathing. Evidence did the talking, and in the end, staying alive was the only revenge I ever needed.